Oi, agora ligou. Good afternoon, everyone. We will be starting our session in just a few moments. I would first like to apologize for the delay in our programming. Would you sit there? Yeah. Thank you. So welcome everyone. My name is Clara. I am currently a researcher at Transforma and also a student here at Unicamp, and I'm here to welcome you all to our session about intersectionality between race, class, and gender in the fight for social justice. I will briefly introduce our panel. So first we have Clara Marinho, which is a planning and budgetary analyst and also a Transforma researcher. Then we have Abhinami Joswaran, General Secretary of the All India Dalit Women's Rights Forum. We have Gacheki Gachichi, Coordinator of the Mathari Social Justice Center in Kenya. And Ismat Raza, former President of the Women Democratic Front in Pakistan. Nilüfer Kosh, member of the Executive Council and spokesperson for the Commission on Foreign Relations at the Kurdistan National Congress, and Haj Patel, research professor at the University of Texas. And lastly, moderating our table is Professor Luisa Nassif, which is the director of MAGI and also a professor here at Unicamp. So the floor is yours, Luisa.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's a very huge pleasure to be here with you all today. I was given this honorable role of moderating the table with such powerful voices on the theme of intersectionality between gender, race, and class on the struggle for social justice. The table that brings us together today have all these very diverse voices fighting for social justice and against discrimination in many fronts, ethnic, caste, gender, among others. And on the one hand, each of us focuses on different manifestations of discrimination. But what connects us here is that we have dedicated our work to fighting against a common and violent power structure. Bringing us together is a unique opportunity to forge more strength in what connects us and to find a common agenda among those differences, which sometimes also poses some obstacles to achieving social justice and coherence. So I hope we can have a very prolific conversation among us and forge that strengthness. There's a little caveat that I think should be brought to light right away, which is the fact that English is not the first language of many of us here, and we do not have translation for this table, which limits not only the voices that are able to be part of the table, obviously, but also how we present ourselves, how we are able to formulate our thoughts, and how you all are going to be receiving this. So I think this is always important to think of how we create a world where different voices can be heard without always passing through this language that became our common denominator in the world. So I'm not going to take too much time in the beginning because we have a lot of important people here to speak, but hopefully I can help make some sense in the end of the different voices we'll be hearing. So I will start. I'll let you know what is the order that I thought for the table. So I'll start with Sumatra Za, and then I'll give the floor to Abiramijo Tswaran, then Clara Marinho, Raj Patel, Gasheki Gashehe, and Nilufer Koch. So without further ado, Sumatra Za, please, the floor is yours. I'll pass you the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and salam to all of you. English is my third language, and I was just suddenly called to this panel, so I'll speak whatever I feel appropriate because there was no time to prepare, but I think I have full command and will say a few words. As far as the question of gender is concerned, it's not something which is isolated or separate from other forms of oppression. It is intertwined with class oppression and national oppression, and it is also interlocking. For example, we cannot think of liberation of women if the entire nation is under oppression. We cannot think of liberation of working class women if their entire working class family is under oppression. Therefore, I believe that class oppression, national oppression, and patriarchal oppression, these are intertwined and interlocking. I'll just speak about some of the work we are doing in Pakistan and basically explain how imperialist wars have turned patriarchy into a strategic asset for them. The kind of man, the kind of masculine man, the warrior who has been developed to fight these imperialist wars. Pakistan is a multinational state and suffering from last 40 years from an imperialist war. The Americans basically attacked Afghanistan, Afghan Soul Revolution, and Pakistan was created together with Israel in this second, after the Second Cold War, for the second after the Second World War, for the Cold War, and both of the countries have played frontline states as far as the Anglo-Saxon empires' economic and political interests are concerned. The status of women was systematically cut down to half, legally and otherwise. For example, if you're raped, the law says that you have to produce 4 male Muslim as witnesses. Interestingly, if there are 4 males standing there, a rape cannot take place. They will theoretically will have some humanity to stop it, but no. The law basically confuses adultery with rape. Secondly, we have half inheritance rights. Third is the law of evidence that women cannot give evidence in financial matters. So the women's status was reduced to create an extremist patriarchy. And the same has happened in Afghanistan. And I'm sure that in the rest of the Muslim world, the religion, the way it was used, for example, in IS, Daesh was created, the Taliban were created. These are forms of extremist patriarchy, fanatic patriarchy, ferocious patriarchy. And this was the requirement of the global capital to fight these wars. So in Pakistan, and also I guess my comrade Nilufer will also talk about the Kurdish experience, but we feel that we as women, as socialist feminists, we have to expand the horizon of feminism, not only from liberal feminism, but also the socialist feminism horizon. We've been able in Pakistan to bring in national question into feminist struggle. There are thousands and thousands of mothers sitting on road looking for the missing people. It's a, ethnic genocide. It's a state involved in organized ethnic genocides of Baloch and Pashtuns. And I belong to Pashtun nation. Our lands were destroyed, our people were killed, and on daily basis, thousands of people are missing, killed, and picked up for ransom. That's the kind of situation we have. And in this entire scenario, patriarchy plays an important role in the sense that if, for example, in Afghanistan, there's a ban on girls' education. So you put half of the population out of public arena. There's a ban on them for running businesses. In Pakistan, girls' schools are being blown up. And after the murder of Osama bin Laden, because he was found by the Americans close to an army base under the protection of the army, and there was a mock campaign run by an NGO called Save the Children Fund. So they held this polio campaign, and that's how they got his DNA. And it was confirmed that he's here and he was being killed. In relation to that, all the immunization programs have been jeopardized because these women workers who are vaccinating the children and the women, they are being killed by the death squads. Therefore, I conclude that capitalist patriarchy has taken these extreme forms basically due to imperialist interventions, and the third world countries, wherever we have authoritarian regimes, have been backed up by this Anglo-Saxon empire now led by the Americans. And not only that, the way religion has been demonized. As a Pakistani, when I go everywhere, we are the Muslims are conflated with Taliban or religious extremist. If you're a Pakistani citizen and you have a green passport, if you travel around the world, they look at you as, the Islamophobic phenomena is a reaction to that. Not only that, the citizenship laws have also been changed. If you marry a non-Pakistani man, he cannot be given a citizenship. You cannot bring in, you can go out by law. So all these forms are forms of extremist patriarchy. And the ethnic genocide and the national oppression is such that these are so intertwined that these thousands of women who are looking for the missing people who have been literally killed, but they don't know. Now these women and their children's future has been destroyed. These are political workers mostly, and they are suffering from social isolation. People get scared that I will be picked up or something will happen to me. So not only social isolation, the men were breadwinner. It's after all a male-dominated society. So these families suffer from this war. There are military operations. First, the American created jihadis, and then they came and they wanted to fight a so-called war on terrorism. I call it a war of terrorism, not a war on terrorism. So, and now under a Doha agreement, the Americans brought in Taliban in Afghanistan. My country is adjacent to Afghanistan, and I come from an ethnic group. We share half of the nation with Afghans. We are Afghans, and within Afghanistan, there are Pashtuns and there are Tajiks, there are Uzbeks and other nations, but the largest population is Pashtun, and I come from that group. And given these circumstances that there was a 40-year war and no nation on face of earth has seen this long war. So we formed the Women Democratic Front. It's a socialist feminist organization. We do feminist organizing. And in addition to that, we do political education. We do resistance building, like the rallies, protests. We do writing. We have our own journal called Narivat. Not only that, we have international solidarity, like we're part of the Progressive International, and trying to build a resistance movement, which is the most difficult thing to do in our part of the world because it's highly radicalized society. And to my horror, the Americans know the best how to play with religion and manipulate it. And that's what they did in the Middle East. That's what they're doing in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. So for us, religious fundamentalism, capitalism, imperialism, violent patriarchy, and not only that, our own state is involved and backed up by them. They support authoritarian regimes around the world. They do not let any democratic government if that government is not serving their best strategic interests. And to conclude, we are faced with second Cold War now. And this second Cold War involves Palestine, also a potential war on China, direct war, probably in 2025. And all the Taliban group, the death squads, which were originally created through the Pakistan army, these were created by the Americans and their allies. These groups have been recruited into ISIS, the Daesh. And they come every day and they kill people. My own hometown was taken last week by the Taliban. And I myself, I'm the internally displaced person and living in Islamabad. It's a very difficult world, and we we are struggling to build international solidarity to fight back imperialism, and within the country fight back capitalism. In addition, we have traditional tribal setup in the pockets and also some feudal formations in sections of our country. So it's a mix of tribal, feudal, capitalist forms of patriarchy. And some are extremely violent, and we had some examples that women were punished, they were paraded naked on roads, and it has happened in India. My comrades from India can also explain these incidences. So for us, there is no other way except for building a socialist feminist movement, and we've been able to expand the horizon of feminism, and we've been able to bring in national liberation struggles into the framework of feminism, because there is kind of globally an artificial binary that if you're a feminist, then that doesn't mean national liberation struggle or that doesn't mean class struggles. But we've been closely co-organizing with class struggles with the left and fight against patriarchy and also against imperialism and the ongoing violence. Particularly, Pakistan is a national security state. All powers, economy, politics, everything is taken over by the army. And in fact, Pakistan was created as a cantonment post by the Britishers, later on taken over by the Americans. So I just close this subject by saying that feminism essentially must involve all progressive forms of struggles. Otherwise, it is very limited, and at the end of the day, it is used by imperialists as a ship run by women only. The capitalist ship run by women only. You know, they are in power position and it means nothing else. They are just co-opted. And Madeleine Albright, Condoleezza Rice, or Hillary Clinton, they are not feminists at home. They create pretexts like Taliban, like Daesh, and many other outfits, and then they say, oh, there is human rights violation, women rights violation, let's bomb them. So the way liberal feminism has been used, co-opted by imperialism, that's one of our concern. And I have a firm belief now, which I didn't have before, that human rights and women rights, both paradigms are colonial in nature. The way it has been, these have been used for imposing sanctions on countries. These violations were created by them, not that we did not have patriarchy historically or nothing was happening, but they scaled it up. They built their empire on the basis of our blood, on the basis of our women's labor. 1 million Pakistani workers from the war zone are working in the Gulf, building the oil big industry for them. 1 million doctors, engineers go out every year because the country is not livable anymore. Sexuality of women has been seized because the men who go for jobs to Gulf, the women who are left behind of the family, they're not supposed to have sexual life. They have to wait for years and years. And even the sexuality of men who are working in the Gulf, they're not supposed to have a relationship with the woman in the Arab countries. And it's a very sorry state of affairs. And we are left with no other option except for fighting and building struggles. And we hope that we'll be able to build collectively solidarity to create a world which is more egalitarian. And after all, women make half of humanity on this world. So we hope that our collective struggle will lead all of us towards collective liberation and an egalitarian world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was very inspiring, and I think a very good kick up to our table and other issues that will come up. I'll pass the floor now to Abirami.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, all. Following ma'am from Pakistan, now India represent this gender-based discrimination based on caste system. We all know the race, right? We have faced on racial discrimination, but what is meant by caste? How it has the similarities, or what is the thing? When we look, both are similar in one way or another. They establish the hierarchy system, social hierarchy, keeping certain community at the top of the hierarchy and putting others at the bottom. So both the things has the same elements, though it has a various historical as well as cultural context are different, but the discrimination and the inequality perpetrated by both the things are similar. So keeping in this, I would like to say about the caste and gender-based discrimination in India. The origin of the caste system, it is very much based on the Hindu religion. It says that the Brahma, the creator of Hindu god, from his parts the people has been created. The Brahmins are created from the head of the Brahma, and Kshatriya, the rulers, who are from the shoulder, and Vaishyas, the traders, are from the belly, and Shudras, who are from the leg of the Brahma. And apart from this, the fifth caste or outcast, the Dalits, are out of the caste system. So we are going to speak about, I'm going to speak about the Dalit and the caste system, how it affects from each and everybody in this country. Though it has been originated from India, but after the partition and other thing, the people started to move from various parts. So it is in Nepal, it is in Pakistan, it is in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So these are the areas, and Nepal very much. So all the South Asian countries are, the Dalits are in majority, and they have been facing this caste-based discrimination. So originally the caste has been rooted in religion, as I was saying, in the Hindu system, but it has been now, it become like a culturally dominated. Whether they have been a Hindu, they want to run away from this caste system, so they convert into another religion. Either it is a Muslim or Christianity or whatever the religion, the people has been faced discrimination because they can't change the caste. If a person is, it is based on birth. If a person is born in this caste system, and even after the death, he will be faced or she will be faced the discrimination. They have been buried in separate places. It can't be with all along the Hindu community. It has been separately, they have been buried. So when you see from the birth till the end, after the death, the caste system continues and they can't escape from the caste system, though they convert into various religion. So if you see the population, India, Nepal, and Pakistan very much identifies Dalits as a distinct social category, and the caste system, the census are very much available there. So the constitution, the safeguards, which is safeguards like India, Pakistan, Nepal, which says on Bangladesh, which speaks about anti-discrimination and equality in the constitution, but still in practically, if you see, the caste is one of the place, it plays a place where it has been discriminated based on caste. So this is an overall phenomena. Though India and Nepal abolished discrimination as per the constitution, and it also has a special legislation if there is any violence occurs based on the caste-based discrimination, then there is special legislation to counter those things. But the situation is how the laws are implemented. We have various laws for each and every provision. Untouchability is abolished. When there is violence based on caste system, it has been addressed. But the implementation, the official who are implementing the legislation, law, are also insensitive towards these Dalit issues, because most of them belong from the dominant caste community, so they doesn't pay attention to the violences faced by Dalits. So there are some of the forms of untouchability. Even it has been formed. The people are not allowed to enter the temple. They are not allowed to fetch water directly. They have to wait until someone comes and pour the water. So you can see these kind of forms of, even in the rural areas, not in much in urban, but in rural areas, if you visit, you can see this kind of places. And segregated Dalit children are made to sit separately, and Dalits are not allowed to sit on the equality on the chair and other things. So these kind of discrimination are very much visible in India and in the rural areas. So coming to the intersectionality, caste, class, and gender, how does it work? We have seen the caste system, how it oppresses the Dalits. And when you speak about Dalit women, it is much more. It is much more complex. The intersectionality, you can see the manifestation of patriarchy for Dalit, for women, Dalit women, is not only on gender, but also the caste. It clearly says, if she is a Dalit woman, then she will be faced, she formed triple form of oppression. One is because of the class, that she is poor, the another is a caste, she belongs to that identity, and third, she is a woman of gender. So these are the triple form of caste, class, and gender. It's really pushes into triple form of oppression. And whenever the women races assert their rights, they face different form of atrocities, violences, and you can see when compared to non-Dalit women faces lot of violences and atrocities, and they are the most forms of laborers in the country. You take whatever the labor, if you take, they are the most, either in the bricklaying, textile garments, mining, construction, carpet making, domestic violence. So various form, if you see even the manual scavenging, even today, it is very much related to the caste identity. So if a woman who is a sweeper in the most of the areas, you can see that she will be from that Dalit community. She may not be from a Brahmanical community or from Kshatriya, Vaishyas. Then the population much more who are involved in this kind of manual scavenging are from this Dalit community. The bricklaying workers, it's very much, it's not only in India, in Pakistan. So when we are seeing as a South Asian context, they are also predominantly driven by Dalit communities, the bricklaying workers, majority of the people. Textiles, garments, and sexual slavery. Because of the socio-economic condition, they are forced to do this kind of sexual slaveries. And there are some communities which do this as one of the work. So these are some of the things that we would able to see. And also the rituals like Devadasi, the Dalit girls are married to the god, and the priests are in having the affair with the people. So this is also one of the kind of thing that we can see. Even in Nepal, there are some community which are involved in this kind of thing. So it's not only forced, but also on ritual sexual slavery are very much we can look into this kind of thing. So this is what we would. And whenever they assert, when the violences are committed against them, as per the Ministry of Home Affairs data, the government data, it clearly says every day 158 crimes are committed against Dalits. So when you see on the Dalit women, the cases are much more. Like in 2014, it is like 6 Dalit women are raped per day. Every day 6 Dalit women. But when you see in 2022, which is a recent data, it clearly says 11 Dalit women and minor girls are raped. This is the government data. So we know how difficult it is to register the cases in the existing government and the phenomena, but even though when we see the look into the cases, it is much more greater, the numbers are increasing, and men from the dominant community use the violence against Dalit women as one of the tool to silence the whole community. It's not only just they want to teach the community a lesson. So in order to teach the lesson, they pick up the Dalit girls and they rape them, Dalit women, and rape them, so that they create a threat among the community. So this is also, we are very much looking into it. And the honor killing, the intercaste marriages. They have to marry within the same community. They can't marry outside the community. If they marry, then they will be killed. So this is one of the existing form of violences that has been coming, so that it maintain the social stratification within the community. People has to marry, and the system has to exist, the caste system. It's not only the violence, but how the government, how the officials are responding to this. I would like to state this example, Hathras, which is a very renowned case, like last 2 years it has happened, where a Dalit girl has been gang raped and murdered. And even in this case, the police very insensitively behaved. They burnt the dead body of the Dalit girl without the consent of the family in order to tamper the evidences. So this is the system. When we go to the police station, when we approach the police for some of the things, the police, how they behave, this is one of the example we could able to see. And in this case, we couldn't able to get conviction. There was lot of public outcry, and it became a national issue and international issue. But even though we could able to get only one person as convicted and other all three are being acquitted. So we could able to see how it works. It's not only the impunity by the state. The impunity increases depending upon the caste of the survivor or the victim. So I would like to say this: even the conviction rates are very much lower when we look into that. So accessing justice is very difficult practice, even though the cases are increasing. But when we look into the justice system, it is not much more. So I feel in this way we have to work together, and we can see this is not the pattern in one country or another. It is in South Asia, the continent, the situation is very worst. So how we are going to look, how progressively we have to think. It is definitely important to emphasize human rights education. It's not at all available, though the constitution says very much the people doesn't follow the constitutional values. So we should demand on the constitutional values, on human rights education, and rational thinking is one of the important things, because whatever they are educated, they follow the caste system. They doesn't think about the purity and pollution concept. So these are some of the things we would like to see. And also the strict implementation of SCST Act. There are special legislation. They are very good in making legislation, but what happened to the implementation part? Until the accused are convicted, it can't spread any message to the other communities. So how the justice has to be provided. And also the international solidarity is also one of the issue that we would like to say. So thank you for this opportunity. I will be happy to take up any questions related to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abirami. That was very inspiring as well, and very difficult to look at. It's a very powerful presentation. I'll pass the word now to Clara Marinho.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Maybe I will speak a kind of Brazilian Portuguese English. I don't know. But first of all, I'd like to emphasize that Brazil has already played a role in the global sphere in thinking about new possibilities for social organization and public policies. And I think that this kind of event can bring us together to rethink possibilities of action around the world. So I am civil servant. I work for Brazilian government. I have this kind of background, and I will bring here some kind of challenges to think about public policies based on gender and race. I think we have a lot of challenges in next years. So the first thing that I like to emphasize that intersectionality has become a kind of hit concept in the international sphere, and dissociated from the oppressions and the material conditions that gave rise to this concept, to them. So this idea has been circulated now in multilateral institutions as an instrument for the effectiveness of public policies. So a kind of washing, yes. So without referring to the struggles of Black women's movements against racism and sexism, and their experiences of fighting for the enjoyment of rights. So I think that this is a point that we need to retain. So now we have a kind of opaque anti-racism and sexism in the public sphere. So here in Brazil, for example, we are facing we can observe a lot of initiatives, specific initiatives, marginal initiatives. They are multiplying in public sector, but they are without a translation in concrete changes in the living conditions of women and Black people. So, for example, we are the 5th country in the world in feminicide. And now we have the same racial income distribution of the past 30 years. So in this sense, it's necessary to expand the scale of the dispute over the concept of intersectionality to bring us achievements in well-being. The second thing that I would like to speak is about the reactions to the advancement of women's and Black movements. We have a kind of virulent response in the public sphere, translated in 2 main points. In the case of Black movements, we can see now a kind of disarticulation of affirmative action in Brazil, especially related to civil service. In the Brazilian case now, we have just a Supreme Court decision is supporting the racial quotas in public service. So the advancements that we have now, we are facing this kind of disarticulation, and now every day we can see books banned from schools. Now, if you open a Brazilian journal, a Brazilian newspaper today, you can see that a book from Ziraldo, a famous writer for kids in Brazil, was banned from schools because it's related to racism. And in the case of women, we have the reaction is about the right to abortion. In the National Congress last week, we have a legislative initiative that criminalizes any woman who aborts up to 22 weeks, even the case authorized by legislation. So the action was only interrupted because the women's movement in Brazil is very organized and responded quickly, taking thousands of women to the streets across the country. And I would also point out that even though the Black and women's movements are the ones that take the most people to the streets today, our demands are called inconvenient. To use a word maybe soft. So from being victims of the conflict over the way that the states operates, we are now considered a kind of we are the agents of problems. Finally, I think that we have a huge problem nowadays, that a huge part of working class, they have adherence to the values of neoliberalism. And this has 2 fundamental vectors: the social networks and the apps. The apps based work platforms like Uber. Here we have iFood and other apps that delivers food. So how can we how can we call these people to the collective fight again, because there is a problem here, and I don't have answers, but I can see that the extreme right can see these as a way of bring these people together to the neoliberalism project. So I put here 3 kinds of provocations. My English not so good, but I think it's okay to have conversations here. And please, I will now speak in português. Gente, eu tenho dificuldades para falar ao vivo em inglês, não, para mim não é fácil. Então, por favor, se vocês tiverem questões que também tiverem as mesmas dificuldades que eu acho que podem ficar à vontade para formular as perguntas em português, e aí a Luísa, a Clara ou eu podemos traduzir. Obrigada.
Thank you so much, Clara. And yes, I hope we'll get, we're trying to also have some time for discussion, because I think given all the different voices we have in this table, this is exactly where we're going to find some interesting things to bring about. So I want to give everyone a chance to talk some, and then for us to also have some time. So now Raj Patel, please.
Thank you. I want to share some good news. When it comes to intersectional struggles, we know that in general, we live under capitalist patriarchy. We live under racism and casteism and classism. But I want to share the results of a meeting that I was at last week in Thailand. We had a few social movements all together. We had the MST from Brazil. We had Abahlali Basem Jondolo from South Africa, and I'll tell you about them. A small movement from the United States that does post-climate change reconstruction. We were working with indigenous women in the Philippines and the Thai Peasant Federation. So 5 movements. And we were there to talk about the climate crisis and the work that social movements are already doing. Because every movement is dealing with the climate emergency. Every social movement is rebuilding after a storm, or rebuilding after a flood, or extreme heat, or a fire. All of these movements are in the emergency care world. And this climate crisis is already patriarchal. It's already racist, and it's already a war against war. So let me give you an example from South Africa. I work very closely with a movement called Abahlali Basem Jondolo. I'm going to teach you some Zulu. So can you say Abahlali Base Jondolo? Fantastic. So what you just said was people who live in shacks. And this is a movement of 130,000 people in South Africa. And shack dwellers are living on very precarious land. They are always either the working class or they don't have, often don't have jobs. We have unemployment at 42%. So there's a class situation, but it's also a race situation because it has been black people who have been put into white communities to be vote banks. So people, when the ANC wants people to vote in white areas, they move black people in. Now, it's very important that in South Africa, black is a political term that includes people like me. In South Africa, the left took the idea of racial categories and said, no, we are fighting back with an understanding that because we live in a white supremacist society, everyone who suffers white supremacy, even in different ways, must unite together under the political label of black. And I think that's already a step forward, and I'm going to explain why. But because the shack dwellers are rebuilding after the catastrophe, and because they are building power, they are subject to assassination. I mean, again, all of our movements deal with the violence of the state and political assassination, comrades who are in hiding, who travel from one place to another. This is part of the care that the movement now has to do because of the climate crisis and because of the crisis of capitalism. So every movement is in the business of care. So that's the first point that I want to observe, that the crisis is already making movements do care work. The second point I want to make is that internally this prevents, or this poses a contradiction, or a moment for movements to reflect internally. Because who's doing the care work? Disproportionately, it's women. Even in the movements that claim for socialism, it's usually the women who are doing the long-term care work. So within Abahlali, this moment of recognizing that actually a lot of the movement work is care work has prompted some reflection and some change within the movement. The movement has always been anti-racist, but also the movement has learned from the MST in Brazil about processes of anti-patriarchal organizing. So this is a moment of international solidarity that's very concrete. Abahlali now has a women's forum and a gender forum, so two different things, where members of the movement who identify as men can confront and be confronted about patriarchy. It's also a way for the idea of care to be extended, because Abahlali has learned from the MST about caring for the earth. And this means that the movement is now growing food and distributing it, again, learning from the Brazilian comrades. So this moment of care offers a chance for social movements themselves to think about how movements have internalized patriarchy and how to change that. And so in our discussions last week, this became a very fruitful area of exchange, thinking about how movements have to confront gender-based violence within the movement, how movements have to confront trauma. I mean, everyone here is traumatized because of the climate crisis. And that work needs to be part of the movement, of recognizing and building systems of care to deal with trauma. Because otherwise we're always going from one emergency to the next emergency to the next emergency. And we've lost movement members to suicide, we've lost movement members to violence. So that's the second point I want to make, that this is, the care moment is a moment for combating patriarchy, but deepening the idea of care to the ecology through food, but also to one another through our care for psychological stress. But the third and last thing I want to say is that this is also a chance for movements to reconfigure their demands of the state. Because if the movements are always rebuilding shacks, for example, then the state maybe doesn't have to worry. If the movement is doing the work of feeding people, maybe the state doesn't have to worry. And that, we all agreed, is not the vision that we have for our movements. The vision that we have is for ecological and socialist feminism. And it's very important that these three things go together. It has to be socialist because capitalism is the source of these issues. But it can't be patriarchal because, again, that reproduces the worst kinds of capitalism in our hearts. And it has to be ecological when we make demands of the state externally, because the climate crisis is already here and it's already hurting us. So this agenda for care is a moment for international solidarity that works, where last week we were exchanging strategies for demanding better policy from the state. And we were thinking about how we organize to make our movements demand anti-patriarchal and anti-racist responses from the state. And maybe I'd end with a small anecdote from Abahlali. So you may have heard that there were elections in South Africa. And in South Africa, the ANC, the Party of Liberation, has fallen to the right, and they have become very chauvinist. And in fact, there are other areas and other parties that have fallen to a right-wing patriarchal nationalism, a Zulu nationalism that is precisely about the power of men and the power of tradition. Abahlali has always fought that. And you may have heard of riots in South Africa a few years ago, where there was anti-immigrant and anti-Chinese riots. They never happened in Abahlali settlements. And Abahlali, when the movements were, the comrades were deciding who to vote for, in the end, they voted for a small party called the Economic Freedom Fighters. But the EFF have also been flirting with the right and flirting with identity politics in a very negative way. So Abahlali said, look, we are 130,000 people. If you want our vote, you come to our settlement and you apologize for your racism and you apologize for your patriarchy. And they sent someone and he apologized. The movement was able to make this demand because we were organized. And I think that if we are interested in this intersectional, in the moments of intersectional liberation, then social movements have a great deal to share about anti-patriarchal and eco-socialist feminism. And that's the future we want. And I'm very grateful to answer your questions, but to share more. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Raj Patel. Now I'm going to pass the word to Gashaki Gashehi.
Thank you very much. After Raj, I think I have not much to say because he has given us the vision and clear about how we reframe our demands. My name is Gashehe from Kenya. Kenya is very far away from here for sure. And I'm very happy to be here with these great feminist freedom fighters, so very inspiring. I come from a community-based organization called Madare Social Justice Center. It is based in an informal settlement like favela. And we have a lot of violence. And I agree, as the Comrade Crash said, like here in Brazil, a lot of feminicide problem. Women pay heavy burden of domestic violence in our space. There's a lot of sexual and gender-based violence, and in our center we have a campaign on stop sexual and gender-based violence, and this has been shared here. It is a crisis of capitalism. All of us, and I think we're only men here because we're enjoying a patriarchal privilege. First of all, we need to start reflecting from ourselves because we are part of the pillars of capitalism. Is it true? Patriarchy is a pillar of capitalism. So women, as a comrade share about Dalits, they share a double oppression because of their nature of their work, their struggle, and the work that they do more of care work. So, and I agree the way we are constructing our social movement. So we need to educate ourselves from that. How are we constructing our social movement? In our center, we have many times is a women-led organization, but that does not mean in the society they don't face a lot of challenges in a community organizing, because you will find men always will have more time because women are doing care work. So they face a lot of these challenges, but then is a system that we are in. I'm very happy to hear about the history of Afro-Brazilian, and because in Africa, before the colonial settlement came, or before the capitalism infiltrated the African society, women, it was matriarchal. Matriarchal. Even naming, you name after women. But women, before capitalism, they controlled water point, they controlled food, they control fire. That time, man was not a head of a family. Before capitalism, before colonial settlement, before disruption, before slavery. So that society of women that was more powerful. But colonialism, when it came and it divided our land, and it says the land now it is registered under man. Yeah, and now you see where women were controlling land, it changed now it's man, and the man owned land without paper. So I agree, comrade, that this is a lot of almost 100 million Dalit women doing a very difficult work, violence, poverty, and hopelessness. The same with Africa. The entire African land, when you go during the day, who is doing the manual labor, the cultivation of land? It's women. Even me, I am a son of a single mother, but my mother was a father and mother. And you could see the history of those women. They pay heavy price in carrying the burden of the society. As a comrade, I say that women are more than even men in this world, and they are carrying the heavy burden of this crisis of capitalism. So as you see, it is capitalism, it is imperialism. So we have also to interrogate it clearly, so that also we don't fall pitfall. And I agree with Raja, and I am really willing to learn more about this, the demand that we frame. So Madare social justice, we are trying to build a social justice movement. Now in Nairobi, informal settlement, like favela here, we have like 21 social justice centers. We started with a campaign against extrajudicial killing and forced disappearance. Now, after that, we have been able to push the government that is able to even say now they understand there is a problem of extrajudicial killing, of enforced disappearance. The same way it happened here in Brazil, in somewhere, Rio de Janeiro, I read somewhere about a lot of extrajudicial killing, enforced disappearance. So we have done that kind of a campaign in Kenya, and it became very strong that even capitalist bourgeois media picked those. And even the current reactionary president, who is very close like Bolsonaro, but he campaigned and said, no, I'll stop enforced disappearance. You can see even a most reactionary president can pick those kind of language, but he picked them because of a campaign that we did in our center. So there is that what we have done, and then now we have moved on in a campaign on ecological justice. So we have formed a network called Ecological Justice Network in the informal settlement, and then close to our center there is a river called Madare River. So we have gone there and we are trying to clean it and create some community parks. Now those community parks also become sites of organizing. And also we created something like called a solidarity kitchen during the flooding. But here Raj has really criticized us. We needed to reframe that so that we don't continue doing charity instead of demanding access to healthcare, access to education, access to food and livelihood for all. So I think that's something that we are learning as a social movement. But what I say that very powerful from Clara is that also we have to be very careful with what she has said. And I think it's good to have people from the government also having this kind of a very strong view and articulation. You know, it's very powerful to find, whether from a university or from government, that they can able to articulate the question of women. Because I agree with her, the banding of the intersectionality without changing people's material condition is a big issue. It's a big issue. And I think we need to think about that. How are social movements using these words to frame our struggles? Because there's one great revolutionary in Cape Verde, And I'm sure because of many Portuguese here, name is very close, called Amica Cabral. And Amica Cabral said that people are not fighting on their ideas in people's head, and people are fighting for their material condition to change. That ordinary people here in a university, the son of the worker, a daughter in favela, they are looking for women. They are saying, how can I get today water, healthcare, food, and shelter, basics? So if us as community organizers, we need to transform ourselves to the agency that liberates itself from patriarchy and help to build what Comrade Rada says so powerful. And I think I'll carry this from this because of me, even more so, a vision of ecological and socialist feminist of the future. I think if we can build that agency from all our struggles, I think we can have made some important contribution in this struggle for a better world.
Thank you so much, Gashaki. That was also very inspiring. I'll pass the word now to Nilufu.
Okay, can understand. I'm so happy to be here. It's my first time in Latin America. I'm mostly focused on Asia and Africa. So happy to be in Brazil as the first station of Latin America. I will talk about the experience of the Kurdish women's movement. And if I'm going somehow to give a frame of the history of the Kurdish women's movement, it has something to do with our unique history. But some details about the Kurds some of you don't know about the Kurds. So my country, Kurdistan, was divided in 1923 by British France. The biggest part was given to Turkey. The second biggest part was given to Iran. The third one was given to Iraq, and the fourth one was given to Syria. So we have 4 colonial states. As such, we don't have an easy task for liberation. So the British and French game was to make the people of the ancient people of Middle East to source of conflict and problem. Use them always against Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria if they wouldn't listen to Britain and France. So every time they have been using the Kurdish card. So this is the mainly part of the European colonialism in Middle East. It was affecting the Palestinians, but also the Kurds. So there are 2 main problems of Middle East, is the Palestinian issue and the Kurdish one. One of them have to be solved. I don't know which one will be solved. I hope we both can get our liberation soon. So the Kurdish women's movement is a very young movement. It has a history of 34 years. It was created in 9 years. As a result, when the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, was founded in the end of the 70s, then it was going through all the Kurdish areas, motivating the people for revolution. And in the 90s, it turned to mass movements. And interestingly, all the mass movements have been led by women. At that time, nobody could explain why the women are leading the New Year's celebration of the Kurds, which is on the 21st of March. We call it Nevruz. So after this leading of mass movements, most of the women went to the mountains, becoming freedom fighters. Firstly, few hundreds, later on few thousand. From 90 to 91, there have been few thousand women joining the guerrilla movement in the mountains of Kurdistan. It was a challenge for the PKK. They didn't know what to do with all these women. And the traditional role model of the society was reproducing in the mountains. So men have been the commander, women have been the fighters. So this was a challenge for the founder of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan. He said, well, we are a socialist movement. In my movement, there can't be first-class men, second-class women, commander men, and fighters women. So what he did was together with women, he decided to split the army. So said women need specific spaces for their own, in which they can teach, be teach in history. So in the end, women have to know to respond to the question who they are. So because in the traditional Kurdish society is matrilinear, but because of Arabization through Islam, it turned to a patriarchal society, actually. Still, we have in the mountainous areas amongst the nomadic Kurds, mother-ruled societies, but in the urban area, it's mostly patriarchal. So all these women and men in the mountains, they have been reproducing the society in the mountains, in the socialist movement. Because the PKK itself said, we are a socialist movement. What has happened then, the army was divided. So the women's army was far away from the mixed structures from the men's army. This was the first step. Women got academic education in the mountains. You shouldn't understand as a just military wing. It's the mountains are the only areas where they have the opportunities to teach. In the cities, it was dangerous. Then after 3 years, these women have been to teach the men as the commanders. So then this experience that women are the key for social transition starts in the mountains. So women are the key to change the men, not the opposite. So that's why we say the liberation of women is more important than the national liberation. You can liberate your nation like we experienced in the 70s in Angola, Mozambique, or in Chile, Nicaragua, where women have been participating in revolution, or in Palestine. The first have been the women who threw the stones in the first Intifada and second Intifada. After the peace process, women all have been disappeared. So we learned from all the experiences in different countries that we have to make it different. What happened to our sisters in other parts of the world shouldn't happen to us. That's why we said we need this autonomous organization of women. So we have two political parties, two democratic confederal structures, two armies. Everything is double. So the women's movement is a kind of trade union of women. Women who are involved in politics, they have to be member of the women's movement, because we say, if you want to create a democratic socialist future, you have to defeat capitalism and its roots, which is patriarchy. And since we are talking about global justice and gender issues, I would say justice firstly starts in the society amongst men and women. So because we say this is the source of the problem, the first problem and conflict of humanity is the enslavement of women. So women have been the first colonies. Women have been the first classified as a second class. So if it's the starting point of becoming problem, then we should start there with the solution. So that's what we're experiencing. And we say if we want to defeat capitalism, we have to weaken patriarchal culture, patriarchal mindset. And this is the duty and the job of organized women's struggle. So in this sense, we don't care what the man is saying. So because we understand ourselves as the leading, as the key for transition towards democratic justice, and we don't accept women as biological humankind, but as a sense of sociology, because we do believe women are the one in human history who have been able to build communal structures, being more able for collectivism, a little bit more far from selfishness in our mother-ruled societies in the past, and we still have some of the customs in our today's tradition. And we say, we said it's not enough just to have a women's army, and the women's army is not just to defeat the colonial states. No, it's a guarantee of women to be protected against patriarchal oppression in the movement itself. So the Kurdish people's leader, Abdullah Öcalan, was telling the women, it can be that one time will come, they will ask you for a peace negotiation. So you will sit on the table and the UN will mediate. They will ask you to give up your arms. And he said the women must never give the arms. The men can do, but not the women. because it can happen that the men can then lead the table for this peace talks and then later on say, sisters, we thank you, you go back. Now we take care for political rule. So then you use your arms against your male comrades. So this is the reason of the women's army is not just an issue of defending against colonial powers. The other point, which is another achievement of the Kurdish women's movement, is the creation of science of women, because overcoming capitalism and defeating its source, its roots as a patriarchy, needs also to liberate the brain, the thinking, the mindset. So, and we say one of the tools of capitalism is to occupy the brains through science. And naturally, science was historically was a tool to describe the environment where you live in. So now science is kind of a tool to occupy the brains of ours and also to affect our emotions. That's why genealogy, the science of women, has the duty to fight the positivism, which is a kind of tool of occupying your brain. So in northern part of Syria, we have now several tens of academies of genealogy. So they are now working with the universities and primary schools. And for example, one of the achievements was not to give notes in the primary schools. So because giving notes means forcing the child to act accordingly to that what the teacher is saying. So freedom of pedagogy must start in the primary school, and this is led by the Genealogy Academy, which we have now in other parts of Kurdistan also. The other achievement is the system of co-chairs, since we do believe that patriarchy or man is representing us in politics in leading positions. And sometimes they're tendency to much more pragmatist policy, and pragmatism is a tool of patriarchy. We say we shouldn't lose the ground of philosophy if we are taking political decision, and this is the duty of the male co-chair, the female co-chair. So the female co-chair is a symbol of democracy. The male co-chair is a symbol of power, hegemony, exploitation, patriarchy, etc. So transition of the men in the co-chair system, in this, the women, female co-chairs playing the key role. So in Kurdistan, we have everywhere double this co-chair system, co-mayors, men and women everywhere, in NGO structures, in political parties, in the army, everywhere you will see this system. And today, I would say 34 years ago, it was a shame when you have been active in politics as women, but today it's a shame as there are no women in politics in Kurdistan. This is the women's revolution, and we do believe with this attitude we experienced in the last 34 years, we do believe that our revolution is a female revolution. And this is the only guarantee for social transition towards democracy and justice in the society itself. If we can achieve this, then we can later on talk about global justice. At first, we have to implement justice in our own societies, first amongst men and women. That's what we experience in Kurdistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niloufer. That was gave me a lot of food for thought. I have many ideas, 1,000 small notes written here. We are going to have 20 minutes for discussion. I think as the moderator, I'll start by trying to bring about a few things that I think connects some of the things we're saying. So one note I kept writing for myself here is that, I'm obviously reading all this from my academic lenses, from my own work and how this applies to what I'm doing. And one thing I think it's very clear for me is that somehow we needed an epistemological change, on how we are approaching things. So this whole idea of impartiality or neutrality, or what we've been seeing in in academia these days as well, and public policy of evidence-based things, this is very dangerous and complicated as well. Because if we start off from a very exploitative world, because I mean we sometimes say that capitalism is gender biased or race biased. It's not biased, it's exploitative. So it's we need to have this more structural understanding of the system of oppression. And I think what we struggle with is that there are all these cracks in the system currently. We have a care crisis, a climate crisis, political crisis, socioeconomic crisis. Each of us have mentioned a few aspects of this, a crisis of nationalism in some way. And capitalism over and over has reinvented itself, and dividing people has been one of its strongest ways of continuing and surviving, even though even through a very deep crisis in the system. So specifically in my work, I work a lot of care economics, and what we do see in Brazil specifically is that the way that we have been guaranteeing the social pact that we have right now that guarantees the reproduction of life in Brazil is racism and sexism. That's how we are able to still survive, even though there is a huge care crisis. So this is the solution, the tacit solution that has been given. And the moment we fight against patriarchy and we fight against racism, I feel that then we actually have a crack in the capitalist system. And I think many of you have brought that about and have been working exactly through that lenses. I believe we should open the floor. I don't know if anyone has specific questions. And I'll try that. Otherwise, I'll give the word a little bit again for people to react to each other, because I think that would also be good. Questions, reactions. A gente pode, se quiser fazer pergunta em português, a gente faz uma tradução.
Hi, my name is Gustavo. I'm from here, from the Institute of Economic. I have class with Clara, so I get used to. But what I will ask is mostly I see most of the importance. My reaction, I see a lot of the importance of the gender agenda, all of the world, especially here in Brazil. I think we have struggles here for development, for many problems we have here. I see that it's mostly because we lost some of matriarchal culture. We lost much more of our Asian culture, and we are getting too much engaged in capitalism and all. But what I should ask, what I want to ask more, do you see any connections, like we bring here with Patel the idea of how the social, how social organisms are like making a small revolution, and that can change our culture. Do you see that in your country? Do you see like a movement that can like bring a difference? Do you see some perspectives? I mean, this is mostly like, do you see some good visions that what we can change for our words, and the movements you can see in your cultures that can change our words, like in many different places? I don't know if it's objective, but okay, that's most of my question.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, my name is Amanda. I work with Luisa. Besides social movements, how women specifically can contribute to this big fight against capitalism and imperialism and the climate crisis. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pass the word, but I'll add, I guess I'll add a question framed on my own words a little bit as well, which I think connects a little bit to what was asked. But in general, I think you all talked a little bit about that, but maybe a bit more, just bringing about that more explicitly right now. But which strategies do you think you've been using in your own fights that are exactly protecting yourself from the fact that capitalism is there to divide us in some way? So how have you been working through your I don't want to say specific agendas, but you have been involved on fighting oppression from specific perspectives, and sometimes it is hard to fight from that perspective without being put on that spot of someone that is dividing the movement in some way. And I think class movement has brought that about many times, of identity-based struggles in some way being a divisive agenda, which I think from what I've heard today is not what any of us would think about, and would actually be trying to strengthen whatever movement against power of oppression is there, understanding that this actually unites us and doesn't divide us, but capitalism is there to divide us. So yeah, I guess you all understood my question. So strategies to avoid that problem. This second, maybe the second round, I'll go the other way around, actually, so that those that spoke, I guess Nilufer that spoke last can go first. I'll switch the order to give a chance for people to react to each other in a different way this time. Thank you.
Yes, it's an important question, how to overcome capitalism. This is the question which is keeping us busy. I would say we should start with us in the system against the system. So we have to start, but not individually, being organized, because capitalism has a history of 5,000 years, is well organized in every field. We must be able to imagine that we can exist or survive without a central structure, with the state, actually accumulation of capitalism. So we as the Kurds are lucky because we don't have a state. So, and since 20 years we say, if you want to be free, there's no need to have a state, because state itself, nation state itself, is a source of the problem, is accumulation or guaranteeing capitalism. And I'm not so sure if we should understand capitalism as a form of economic exploitation, because capitalism's main tool is the ideological hegemony. And ideological hegemony means, firstly, to justify itself in our brains, saying you can't survive without me. That's why I say we have to imagine that we can exist with the nation state as an organ of capitalism. In these, in the past, people used to say we are so sorry for the Kurds. In every book, you will find the Kurds, the definition of the Kurds. The poor people, the poor nation, there are 50 million and they don't have a state. So when we say, no, we are lucky, we could survive with this central structure. We could keep our autonomies in the mountains, And now we found a solution which we are calling democratic confederalism. And the strategy is that capitalism is reality. We are living in a capitalist system, but you can build your own structures also in a capitalist system. Everything which belongs to capitalism is created by us. All the technology, the bridges, it's ours. So who needs whom is the question. And we say capitalism needs us, not we need capitalism. Capitalism is just 1%. And like David Graeber used to say, we are the 99%. So we have to organize the 99%, that's we. So we have to overcome the obstacles of nationalism, sexism, and religiousness. These are the main instruments of dividing us from each other. We need to learn to be the democratic nation of the 21st century without being the superior ruling ethnic group. So if we achieve this, I think it's easy to overcome capitalism. So that's from my point. And I think we lost in the class struggle, the contradiction of class struggle in the 19th century. We lost also in the national liberation movements of the 21st century. And we do believe that the women's revolution will lead the 21st century. And if we believe in this, we organize ourselves as women, the 21st century will be the century of women's revolution. That's what I believe.
Also, I just appreciate Lula for what he has said, that the banner for the next revolution will not be read by patriarch or patriarch, will be read by women. So powerful. I really appreciate. But the thing about how do we in social movement not get caught up in identity politics? We're in our social justice movement in Nairobi, and I'm very happy Raj has talked about Shalbis Mujondolo in South Africa and how they are trying to combat patriarchy, sexism within the movement. That's very powerful, having reflections and knowing the role that women are playing, and also Nulufashi has talked about a key role women playing in doing providing leadership. So in our social justice movement, we have developed something called organic intellectual network. And then what we do is we take books, we study, and especially there's one paper that was written by Thomas Sankara, which said there is no revolution without liberation of women. That is very articulate on the question of women and the role of the African culture, traditional culture that enslaved women in patriarchy, sexual and gender-based violence. And it's very powerful, Sankara paper, and it's the same line with the Abdallah Öcalan on the idea of genealogy. That women play a major role in terms of the development of knowledge and ideas. So we have these reflections or organic intellectual networks, and majority of some of our young women who participate in the reflections, and some of this discussion is led by the anchor of what Sankara wrote about. There is no revolution without the liberation of women, and he articulated the whole question even for sexism, and sometimes it's very critical even to the marriage, and he exposed to show marriage is the same as what Nulf was talking, the enslavement of women, marriage, that women is there and is like a property, the African culture that women are sold like a commodification. I think with these reflections, sometimes it helps us to see the weakness also we have as men within the movement. So the struggle of identity politics also is part of creating the consciousness to ourselves and to know that we have pitfalls in this political debate. But then other very important thing is also building of organization, that you are not as an individual, you are within an organization that help you to to transform yourself, and also you help to build an organization for creating an individual and collective agency for the transformation of the people. I hope I was able to answer the question, Luis.
I think I'm next, and I agree. I don't think you can do this individually. It has to be an organizational project, and certainly in Abahlali, for instance, the problem is the state. Police violence is a huge problem. Organizing, accountable protection within the movement is a vital part of the care. And I think that is one way that we live within the very violent police state that seeks to repress these movements. The other technique that we have, and I'll be brief, is again, Mulifa, the idea of science. There's every movement I know that's worth a damn has study groups. We study together and we learn and we criticize, particularly criticizing patriarchy, but criticizing and learning and developing our own science. And that happens in meetings. And one of the things about these study groups and these meetings is that they are both productive of knowledge and spaces of reproduction and joy. Because otherwise, being in a movement is like, oh, fuck, we're going to beat capitalism, it's so horrible. But you can't build a movement without pleasure. And certainly in Abahlali, you don't go to a meeting without a song and without food and without care and love and children, junior comrades running around. You need all of that to keep you alive. So it's a different kind of study from this university, I think, but it is generative of very deep and transformative knowledge.
I don't know if there's something that I would add, but let's go about the experiences here in Brazil. I believe too much in the Black women's movement because we are the base of our society. So once we can look the challenges of this group, we can tackling other challenges in society, in our society. So I think that this kind of movement, the movement of the base, can challenge all the pyramid of classes. About strategies, I think that is about a collective work. When you are alone, when you feel alone, it's difficult to build solutions and the things that I am involved with. I'm always with people who wants to change the society. So I am a civil servant, and I always look for other civil servants that can change the face of state. Because I know that if we can change little things, we can make lives better. So I think it's this, for instance.
Yeah, bringing the changes. I will speak on the perspective of Dalits and going into the specialist at that to speak on capitalism. So I feel that it's not only the burden is on the Dalit to bring a change. It should be on overall for all the human being. The perspective of how we are looking as each and everyone as a human being is to be spread. We have to start from the youth. We have to start from the adolescent girls, the adolescent boys, because the changes, if you see, we can't, whoever the men or women, it is very difficult to change at this age. But when we look into the childhood and speak about the human rights, speak about equality and the other institution, definitely we could able to bring changes. That kind of faith we have on the system and other things. And I also feel it also necessary for us to work with the overall community, the solidarity group is very much important, because it is not only our fight, it's everyone fight. So we have to come together, we have to bring in solidarity, so that the situation of today is very worst, that is very critical. So when one person is crying or another is in pain, definitely it is not very far for each and everyone to get the same pain. So we should realize that, and I feel that it is the solidarity, working together and working with the youth and children. These are some of the strategies to bring a change in the society. Thank you.
I guess everybody is so tired, so I'll be very quick. The first question about, your question on the difference part, as far as Pakistan case is concerned and my own experience is concerned. In Pakistan, the woman question was never recognized as a political question. It was always seen as a domestic issue, cultural issue, and as a socialist feminist movement, the Women Democratic Front has been able to struggle for recognition of the woman question as a political question. And interestingly, even sections of the left did not recognize the woman question as important as the class question or national question. Particularly the old guards, the classical left, thought that the centrality of class struggle is important and overlook the national question and the woman question. And interestingly, Lenin also did not recognize feminism or nationalism. He defined it as the national question or the woman question. So the struggle within the left, within the country, and within the democratic circles for us was important to build a narrative within the country that the woman question is a political question. And women and socialist feminist women have a very strong agency, because in strong patriarchal societies, 1,000 men are equal to 100 women's resistance, because women's resistance is more powerful, more visible. In a country where women are not allowed to come out, if women are in direct confrontation with the military, with the state, with the mullahs, then it means something very important. As far as what women can do, your question is concerned, women have been part of all the revolutions of the world. Be it trade union movement, be it feminist movement, be it national liberation movement, they are everywhere. The health workers fighting against privatization, the teachers fighting against privatization, neoliberalism, and in the national, look at the Kurdish example. So women can do wonders. It's the women who are actually sustaining all the families, producing doctors, engineers, and giving it to the world economy. I think if the women were not there, maybe the kitchens will have all would be the most dirtiest places of the world. So from kitchen to politics, they are running this whole world, and they have a great contribution to make, and they can change the world. And the last revolution, I think, of the 21st century will be women's revolution. That's what I believe in. Coming to your question, that's the key challenge. As far as feminist movement is concerned, I think it has a lot of limitations. It cannot bring revolution on its own. Secondly, isolated feminist movement cannot do much also. And by isolating themselves, what they do, they cut themselves from international politics, from class struggle, from national liberation struggle, from democratic struggle. It's only about either patriarchy or gender roles and things like those. So what we have done is, to deal with this issue, our strategy was and is to locate ourselves clearly in the left. And we made in our recent manifesto an open declaration that instead of having an isolated feminist movement, we better be placed in the left to co-organizing together, because the woman question, or for that reason, the national question, both have gender aspect, and so is true for class question. So we work together with the left. We are part of the left, and we've done an open declaration that we come from the left tradition, and we'll be collectively struggling with the left. And we say it in Urdu, Sanji Jedojehed, Sanji Azadi, means collective struggle and collective liberation. Either all of us will be, all of us will be free, or none will be free. So we work collectively, work with the left. No feminist movement can make, revolutionary gains if they are not closely connected with the left. And more importantly, a political party is the best formation for bringing a revolution. If any feminist movement, or for that matter, any other movement, is not associated with organized party politics, they cannot make gains. So our solution, which we articulated after 5 years of work, that we disassociated ourselves from the larger feminist so-called artificial sisterhood. That liberal feminists are our sisters, and they keep on struggling against us. So we are out from the artificial sisterhood thing. We are into camaraderie, and I think that's the best way to go about it. Particularly, that's the experience of also Kurdistan women's movement. It is integral part of the overall movement. And so we work closely with Baloch National Liberation Movement. We work closely with Pashtun National Liberation Movement. We do co-organizing with them. And sometimes we don't find, reciprocal support, but that's perfectly fine, because we believe national liberation paves a way for other gains. Half of the nation, half of the humanity of a nation is found by women. If a nation is liberated, that means a lot for the women of that nation too. And connecting it back to your question, there are the communists have been telling us that women's liberation will come after socialist revolution. The nationalists have been telling us that the woman question is a post-national liberation phase. But we've been able to push for agenda and democratization of these movements. So an autonomous feminist movement is the key, because it works as a searchlight on all the left organization working together. So everybody keep on calling us, checking with us, is this statement okay? What should we do on the International Women's Day? Are you okay with this thing or that thing? So autonomous, stay autonomous, be part of the larger fraternity of the left. Collective struggle, collective liberation. These are the principles which can help us building a movement which has the force to dismantle the oppressive system and liberate the society as a whole. And one final word, we as socialist feminists, we're not for matriarchy either. No patriarchy, no matriarchy. A society which is egalitarian for all human beings, based on social justice, peace, and harmony with nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There's so many things to think about. I'll end by just thinking a little bit, or maybe a little bit of criticism about what Brazil might be doing wrong every now and then, or what I think we have to learn from you. So I wrote down a few things that I think the left movement in Brazil could learn from this table, or what the right actually has been doing correct and we've been doing wrong. And the very first thing is this collective understanding. I think this is something that in Brazil, the right movement, the far right movement has really been doing extremely well. They have been building community-based, really rooted in movements that the left somehow is not doing as much. The second one is something that came from your talk, which is you said we've been fighting in the ideas and we need to be fighting about the material conditions. And I think the left very frequently in Brazil is really an elite movement that has been fighting on the ideas and not as much being involved in the material conditions. Exception done to many movements like MST that has been mentioned. The other one is properly fighting against state-based violence. I think we, especially now that supposedly the left is the government, which, I mean, we can have a whole other discussion about that. But I think the state-based violence in Brazil, and I mean two basic examples is police violence against mostly Black people, and that the Black movement has been fighting extremely well. Second one is, for example, what they're just trying to pass now, 20 years jail for women that abort after a rape after 22 weeks. So the rapist would have 10 years, women that abort would have 20 years in jail. This is state-based violence as well. So I think there are a few things we can learn here and how to think of, you said about the feminist movement being a left movement. I also think how can the left movement in Brazil actually be feminist, because it has not been at all. Most of the, and this I think Clara would have a whole other conversation to give you examples of her experience as a civil servant that she has talked to me about, of how much has been done for women in supposedly left-wing governments or supposedly right-wing governments, how much has been done to Black people, and we expect more and we'll be asking for more. That's it. Thank you everyone so much, and thank you especially to the panelists. This was very enlightening. Make an announcement.
So everyone, we will be heading directly towards the arena. Okay, there is a coffee break there for everyone, so we can just go ahead and we'll be there soon.